Hi, everybody, and welcome to Midweek Pause and our readings of the Psalms this week. Let's go ahead and start by lighting our candle to remind ourselves of Christ's light that shines in each of us. So today we are getting very close to Easter, also Maundy Thursday and Good Friday, but we are right smack dab in the middle of Holy Week this week. And so this week our psalm readings are from Psalm 135 through 137. And the first two psalms, 135 and 136, talk about the things that God has done. They talk about creation and the Exodus when God led his people out of Egypt. But then Psalm 137 turns, and it's a lament from the time when the people were taken captive by Babylon and when they were in exile. And it talks about the people being tormented and brokenhearted and homesick. And if you've ever moved, you may have felt like that a little bit sometimes. But it ends with the thought, or I believe almost the promise, that God is going to bring down Babylon, that God will do right by God's people. So those are our Psalms for this week, but I wanted to also read to you this week one of my favorite stories. This is The Giveaway by Ray Buckley, and it is particularly appropriate for this week of Holy Week, I think. There was a grove of trees where the forest grew thick. The trees had stood there for as long as anyone could remember. Their roots intertwined so that nothing could affect one without affecting them all. They were known to the inhabitants of the forest, the four-leggeds, and those who fly, as the Old Ones. In the middle of the Old Ones stood the oldest of them all, taller and broader than the others. If one stood beneath it, one could not see where its crown touched Father Sky, and smaller trees grew around its roots in the safety of its vastness. It was called the Ancient One, for it had known the Creator the longest of all. It was to this grove that the creatures of the forest and the plains, the four-leggeds and those who fly, gathered for council. Each had sent one speaker, the oldest and the wisest of its kind. Snow fell thick on familiar paths, and each arrived in silence, waiting with the patience of those who have seen much. When the circle was complete, they stood, listening to their hearts. They have lost their way, Whooping Crane said. There is no pattern to their journey. Snow Goose nodded in agreement. They have lost their purpose, Deer Mouse said softly. They do not gather seeds. They do not know who they are. Tatanka, the buffalo bull, dropped his head low. They take more than they need and give nothing back. They do not give away. They do not see long distance, Eagle began. They keep more than they can eat, and while some are hungry, they no longer know that they are connected. They do not know that they are beautiful, Fox said sadly, her white coat blending with the snow. They decorate themselves with stones and hide their spirits. They think that power is what they can hold on to, old Beaver pondered. They say, this is mine, and build lodges too large so that they themselves will appear big. They must make others small so that they will look big, Bear's deep voice answered. In the end, they must destroy themselves or others. They have lost their names and do not know who they are. Grandmother Turtle, who was the last to arrive, made her way slowly to the center of the council. She lifted her head so she could see all who gathered beneath the Old Ones. Her voice was barely audible. We must give away ourselves to them. We must speak to them in soft voices. We must remind them of who they are. She paused, lowering her head into her shell. Then suddenly she lifted her head as high as her neck would allow. I will give them my shell, she said with certainty. I will come with no protection, and they can use my shell to adorn themselves. Around the circle, the council was silent. The wind did not blow through the trees. Not a single branch on the old ones fluttered. The forest was as still as Grandmother Turtle began her walk back to the empty spot in the circle. I will teach them the patterns of life, Whooping Crane said slowly. Snow Goose and I will remind them of the seasons. I will teach them to gather seeds so no one need be hungry, Deer Mouse began. I will give them what I have stored. Eagle searched the night sky and, without lowering her head, said, I will give them my feathers. Perhaps if I cannot fly, they will not feel small. Tatanka, the bull buffalo, stood with his legs squarely on the earth. I will give them my flesh to sustain them, and my skin to warm them. I will give myself away. Each council member in turn rose to speak of the gift, that most costly portion of themselves, that each would give away. When the circle was complete, a new voice was heard. In the shadow of the Ancient One stood the Creator. Oh, children, the Creator began softly, you will give yourselves away, but they will not know that. They will say, see what I have taken, and think they have made themselves larger. For a moment, the Creator paused. It is I who must give myself away. I must give away my protection and come vulnerable to their lodges. I must choose to become small so that they can choose to know me large. I must give away my name so that they can know their names. The Ancient One had stood silent. The sound of his voice had not been heard in many winters. Creator, how can this be? How can the great mystery become small? The Creator stood beneath the Ancient One. The shadow of the great tree became light, and the grove of the old ones became full of the presence of the Creator. A baby will be born. He will be the son of the great mystery. He will be born not where the two-leggeds are gathered, but among the four-leggeds and those who fly. He will bring light into confusion. He will bring hope into despair. He will bring love, and his name will be great. The Ancient One began to tremble, and those who fly left its branches. The grove of the old ones moved in its quake. Creator, what can I, whose name speaks only of my age, give away to the great mystery become baby? What can I do from my grove in the forest? The Creator turned toward the Ancient One. The voice of the Creator was low. You will be his support. You will be his place of rest. You will hold his body. You will hold him up in the beginning and in the end. And the Ancient One wept, partly for joy and partly for sorrow. And so it is we come into the part of Holy Week that becomes sorrow. And soon we will come to the part of Holy Week that becomes joy. I'll see you all next week. Thanks for joining me. Bye-bye.